joining me for today's card making tutorial. We're going to be putting together a Christmas card using the new Three Kings set of stamps. Now I'm actually using the digital version, the pre-colored digital version, but you can use the clear set if that's what you have. And I'm also going to be using the coordinating cutting dies, and they work with the clear stamp set and the digital set if you resize them to the same dimensions, which is what I've done. You'll also need a card base and some cardstock for your hills, but I'll explain all that during the video. Now, if you have any questions at all, remember to send me an email or feel free to hop over to my Facebook page or to my blog. So let's get started. I've printed the coloured digital version of each of the Three Kings twice. They are the same size. I made them the same size as the clear set so that they will match the cutting dies. It will be a lot easier for me to cut them out. You could, if you want to, of course, stamp with the clear set and then colour them in and then use the dies, or even fussy cut if you want to. It's a lot easier with the dies because they are symmetrical. The stamps are symmetrical. That's one of the best things about this set, is that it means that I can sandwich two back to back and they're going to be exactly the same. I don't have to worry about flipping or mirroring the image at all because each design is the same from one side to the other. So the left and the right are the same, so that if you flip it over, they're still the same. That'll make a bit more sense as we go along. You're also going to need a card base. I'm using this beautiful navy colored card. It's 5 1/4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And I also have a piece of craft which is almost 5 1/4 inches long and 3 inches tall. This is going to go inside the card and it's going to form the desert hills for my Three Kings to stand against. And it will be visible both sides. So once I cut in a window, then you're going to be able to see part of that craft cardstock. Now, when you're choosing the die for that window, what you need to remember is that the Three Kings will be standing in front of that window, and you want to be able to anchor them at the top and the bottom. So when you're cutting out your kings, you want to make sure that this window, whether you use a die or whether you cut it yourself, that the king will be able to reach across the entire span. So you'll be able to anchor it here with some adhesive and at the top with some adhesive as well. So I'm going to cut all of these bits and pieces out and then we'll start our construction. Here I have my kings all cut out, all 6 of them ready to go. And the next part, as I said, it was to cut out the window from the front of the card. I'm going to have a traditionally opening card, so a left-hand side opening. And then I'm going to use this stitched oval die in the center. So I'm just going to line it up, cut an aperture out of the front. So open up your card, place it in the center and cut out that window. And then you'll be able to see through to the inside of the card. Okay, so I've just cut the front, so lifting out that center piece, which you can then hold on and use for something else if you want to. Set those aside. And here's my card now with the window cut out of the inside. So this is where you want your kings to be able to span that distance. So what I meant by that was, if you take one of your kings, so I've got one of each here, you want to make sure that they can reach right across that opening and then have a little bit at the top and the bottom so that you can secure them in place with a little bit of adhesive. So you can see here their heads just sort of reach the top and their robes reach the bottom on the other side so that they can be anchored in place so that when you open and close the card, they're not going to move too much. Now I've also got this piece of craft and that's going to go inside my card, and I'm going to cut in a wavy line. And that's going to simulate the desert, the sand dunes of the desert where the Three Kings have traveled. So I'll do that first. You don't have to be too fussy about that. You can just use scissors or you can use, I'm using just a knife, and all I'm going to do is drag my knife along and create an undulating line. If you want to, you can draw it in pencil. I know that there are some companies that make dies in the shapes of hills. You don't need to be overly fussy about that cut. It really isn't going to be that visible because the kings are going to stand in front of it. So as you can see, that was nice and quick and easy, and that's going to be placed inside my card like that to form that desert landscape. Now, as I said, I'm just going to use glue to secure my sandhills in place. The reason I made this cut a little bit shorter than the 5 1/4 was to take into account the fold in the center. If it's exactly the same size, what you'll find is when you close your card, you're going to have a little bit sort of sticking out at the edge there, and you don't want that. So you don't want it sort of protruding a little bit like that, which is why you only need to cut off just a sliver. It doesn't have to be very much at all. Now, the piece of craft card is going to go all the way down to the bottom, so flush with the bottom down here, and then make sure that you apply your adhesive all along the bottom of that oval as well. So run a little bit of glue or your tape, whatever you like to use, around and then along the edges. So just make sure you take it all the way to those edges so that you're sort of not just flapping around in the breeze or whatever when you turn the card, open the card up and things like that. Okay, so just a bit more glue in the center there to hold it into place, and then lay it over the top. When you're doing things like this and you want the bottoms to match up, it's easiest just to place them flush on your desktop and move them around that way. They tend to sit nicely that way. Just use the bottom or the surface of your desk so that they're all flush. And then we'll press it all into place with our bone folder. So you can see now from the front of the card that we've got a window with those hills showing in the background. The next step, of course, is to secure our kings in place. Now, I mentioned before that these stamps and the dies are symmetrical. So when you have two the same, you can actually layer them back to back, and they're going to match up exactly so that you don't have to worry about flipping and skewing and mirroring the images and things like that. They're going to work exactly back to back. Just like that, so that when I come to glue them on, I will be able to place them over the top and then on the inside as well. So that's the next step, is to place them over the top and get them glued in with some adhesive or some tape. To place the kings, you want the one that you're placing in the center, you want him to sit a little bit higher than the two that are going to go either side. And that's just really about perspective. So if you've got the guy in the center standing a little bit further back, then he's going to be a bit higher down here. These two on the outside are going to come a little bit lower than he is, and that's just to make it look correct. If you put those higher than him, they actually look as if they're floating in the air. That perspective is not correct because he's standing behind them. He needs to be a little bit higher up in the image so that it looks right. Okay, and make sure that everything is going to hit the top and bottom for your adhesive so that you're going to have places to apply the glue. You can leave spaces between the kings if you want to, or you can layer them one over the other. It's really up to you. So get them in place, a little bit of adhesive top and bottom, and of course you can place it over the sand because they cover that sand if you want to. That's not a problem. Just get them in place so that they're nice and secure on the front. So just a little bit of glue, top and bottom, and then place them in the right location. So my kings are all in place on the front cover. Now, as you can see on the inside, however, you can see the backs of them. Now, that's where that symmetrical shape of the stamps and dies really works well. So these will layer straight over the top in the same order. So you want that same guy at the back, and then lay the other two either side and glue them right over the top. So you can glue those directly to the bottom and the top and to the kings that you've already placed on the other side. And you form the same image but on the inside of your card. So again, a little bit of glue or double-sided tape and secure them in place. I'm just placing my last king and making sure that they line up both sides. So before the glue dries, just turn it over quickly and make sure those edges are all lined up nice and straight. Give them a good press. And because they're secured together, you've got the card front basically sandwiched between the kings, so they're going to be nice and secure. So that's it. That's the base of our card. Now we can make it pretty, of course, with some sentiments, some stars in the night sky. You might want to add other little bits and pieces, borders and things. I'm going to do some stars and I'm going to add a sentiment as well. So I'll get started on those and then I'll show you how I do the stars. I'm using one of the sentiments from the clear set. If you have the digital set, you can, of course, print one of the sentiments, whichever one you like. I'm using Joy to the World, the Lord is come, and I'm actually going to place it on the inside of my card. So right down in the bottom section underneath the kings themselves, I'm just going to stamp that sentiment. It's a nice long sentiment. I'm going to get it as centered as I can and then just stamp it down right there on that craft colored cardstock. Remember when you're stamping to leave it for 3 to 5 seconds. You don't have to press it extraordinarily hard, firmly, but leave it for a little while so that the ink has time to transfer to the cardstock. All right, so there we go. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. My sentiment is in place. If I wanted to, or if you wanted to, you can certainly add some more bits and pieces to this side of the card that will be seen through the front. So I'm going to actually put in a couple of little stars inside there so that when it opens up, you'll be able to see them inside and from the front of the card as well. Now the stars, I'm just going to create them using a white pen. It's a white sort of gel pen that sits on top. It does take a little bit of time to dry, so if you are working on the front or the inside first, make sure you allow it to dry before you switch to the other side. All I'm going to do is add just some spots of color, dots and spots, all different sizes. When you're making stars, you sort of want to place them randomly. So a few here and a few there, some close together, some big, some further apart. And make sure you take them right over to the very edge of your cardstock. So don't leave sort of a large gap, top, bottom, sides, whatever, because that really draws the eye to that area. You can sort of tell that something's not quite right. And if you want to do the Star of Bethlehem, maybe sort of place it off to the side. Do that by creating a sort of a puddle of ink. So I'm just going to do a large puddle of ink, a large circle, and then flick your pen upward just a little bit and then downward, same way, sort of dragging that ink, and then either side. So a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, and you create a sort of a diamond pattern. And then you can add some more little flicks in between each of those as well. And that will give you your beautiful big star. You can do this with paint if you want. You may have a stamp that will give you the star. But I like to use the white. And the white, particularly against that really dark navy, looks beautiful. So I'm going to finish this off and I'll show you the card when it's all done. I'm adding just a few last stars to the inside of the card. As you can see, I've taken the stars right across the entire inside. So right along that that inside top part is all the starry sky. I also decided that I'm going to add another sentiment to the front of the card because, as you can see, it's just a little bit bare over here. So I'm going to bring in a sentiment just stamped in the same colours, in the same general colours, and with the same cardstock. There are lots of white inks on the market, but for my money, I still think the heat embossed white looks best. It's much more vivid, especially on the dark cardstock. So I've heat embossed another sentiment here, wise men seek him still. And I'm just layering that onto a piece of the craft card that I've punched out with a punch with a nice scalloped edge, and I'm going to add that down the bottom there. I might actually pop that up on a little bit of foam tape to give it a bit of dimension as well. So I'll do that, and then we'll think about adding some mediums to our card. So a bit of sparkle and a bit of shine, because of course it's a Christmas card, so we want a little bit of something fun. There are a few places on the image that are ideal for adding mediums. The kings all have a little bit of gold on them, so they have their gold crowns and of course the gifts that they're carrying. So they're ideal for adding a little bit of something glossy, a bit of glossy accents, or I'm using crystal lacquer. So you've got a nice little bit of shine from the crystal lacquer. And I'm going to add that over all the parts that are gold on the image itself, so the pre-colored gold. Don't worry if you don't get it exactly in the right place. You just need a little bit of shine just to show that it's the gold. So I'm going to put the gold all over those parts. And then I'm also going to use some diamond stickles for some of the stars in the sky, just to give it a bit more sparkle. I finished adding those mediums to the front of my card for a little bit of sparkle and shine, which is perfect for Christmas. And that's it. I'm pretty much done, except for filling out who it's to and who it's from. But as you can see, it's beautiful from the inside as well as the outside because of those symmetrical stamps that allow me to do that. They're really also good for things like spinner cards where the image spins around, or anything that's kind of back to front where you want the two sides to show. So that's the Three Kings set. It's a relatively easy card to do. I hope you'll give it a try. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to send me an email or catch up with me on the blog or over on Facebook. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.